Rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, everyone, for being here today to discuss this very, very important topic: school choice, charter schools, private schools, how we educate our children. And thank you to Joe, Representative DeSori, for being generous enough to get us into your district. I'd like to hand it over to you to let you make some opening remarks. Go ahead.
Thank you, Chairman Kale. I just have a couple thank yous. Of course, to you, Chairman Kale, and the members that are joining us this morning. Certainly, the testifiers. Thank you for your expertise, your time, and also our hosts today, Logos Academy. Thank you for your hospitality, and of course, CSY. Glad to be here, and thanks for your hospitality. And it is an honor to be the host legislator. This is my district, and of course, we can all agree that educating our youngsters is paramount. So I am happy to be here to shine a spotlight on this issue, and I'm looking forward to hearing testimony. Thank you.
Representative DeSori, you have already shown, you're new to the legislature, but you've already shown that you're a leader in education on this issue. You're going to be on the education, you are on the education committee, and we're looking forward to the work that you're going to be doing there. I think it's important for us to take a step back and kind of understand what we're really talking about here today. In Harrisburg, when we talk about education, we get so caught up in the acronyms and the different organizations and what this group's thinking, what that group's thinking. A couple of weeks ago, I was in the Philadelphia region, and I was talking to a school administrator who had told me that they have a classroom, it's in Philadelphia, where their students, 12 and 13-year-olds, were surveyed and were asked, how long do you think you're going to live? And the answer, that the average answer collectively was 26 years old. It was 26 years old. We have portions of this Commonwealth where kids just don't have hope. They don't have opportunity. They don't feel like they can live in an environment and thrive. And where we could really impact change in that regard is within our education system. So when we're talking about education, we're talking about hope. We're talking about hope for kids and hope for families. And I'm very pleased to be here talking about that with Reverend Anderson, who gave us a wonderful tour today, and with Dr. Lucan, who is, I believe, testifying virtually. Is that correct? And so without further ado, I'd like, if you guys, the floor is yours. Reverend, if you'd like to go first, and then we'll go from there.
So good afternoon, and thank you for taking the time to come to York County to hold this here. As you know, my name is Aaron Anderson. I'm the CEO of Logos Academy here in York, located right down, you saw today, down in downtown York, PA. We also have a Logos Academy affiliate that's located in Harrisburg, PA. I'm convinced that most Americans are fans of school choice, whether they voice that approval or not. And if you don't believe me, then I'd simply say ask the parents of kids who are looking to move or relocate if they've investigated the quality of the local schools. The sad reality, though, for most people is that school choice in America and here in the Commonwealth is largely exercised. School choice is exercised through real estate transactions. That means that choice is not an option for families who can't afford to simply pick up and move to a better school district. But families shouldn't have to move just to achieve school choice. What families need are high-quality school options right in their own neighborhoods. Now, the target populations of the schools that we serve are some of the most challenging in the Commonwealth. A recent national economic study cited York, Pennsylvania as the fourth most under-resourced city in America. The geographies we serve have a high density of students who live in poverty. that current data suggests that in those types of school districts, there's a less than 70% graduation rate from high school. And of those kids who go on to college, only about 11% of those, get this, 11% of low-income first-generation students, only 11% will go on to receive a college degree. That means 89% will not be able to complete college. In the Commonwealth, low expectations and failure have become the status quo. Now, we spend a lot of energy creating excuses for why students fail, but we're wasting human capital. In the critical urban cores of our communities right here in the Pennsylvania Commonwealth and Commonwealth of Pennsylvania are riddled with multiplying economic and community development needs. There's hopelessness, and there's skyrocketing youth violence that we're experiencing right here in our own community. Our cities are not approaching a crisis point. We passed that marker a long time ago. The economic development needs that would be needed to produce jobs that would lift our citizens out of poverty is not happening at the pace needed. And if we could get those economic opportunities to show up, if they ever do arrive, we won't have the local human capital to fill those critical roles. So it was the intolerance of that kind of apathy that led the founders of Logos Academy to challenge that status quo. In 1998, two Christian women launched Logos Academy as a school that was grounded in the love of Christ for these local students, for all of them, to give them education, opportunity, and a key word, hope. Now, private schools are often accused of being havens for middle and upper class wealthy families. But our bylaws, Logos Academy's bylaws, guarantee that 65% of our student population will always come from families that live near or below the federal poverty line. We exist because we believe exasperated families deserve a chance for their children to thrive. Now, in 2023, Logos has grown to be an independently funded, accredited classical K-12 school that serves over 250 students in York and Harrisburg. And a recent $11 million campus expansion increases our capacity to about 450 students. Logos Academy is a very different type of private school for families who can't afford private options. So our enrollment demographics mirror our local urban public and charter schools without access to public funding sources. Now, I can tell you from my experience, there is still some skepticism from local philanthropists around our financial model all these years later, and yet Logos has proven to be innovative, strategic, and resilient. Even, I would say, over half of the publicly funded charter schools in New York City have actually opened and closed since Logos Academy's founding in 1998. So sustainability is clearly not just about having access to public funding. We believe the success of our mission is grounded in that Christian call to make high-quality education accessible while engaging families with the hopeful expectation that their kids can be successful, that God made them to be successful and reach their potential with the right inputs when we work together. We have a near 100% graduation rate due to a holistic approach in education that assesses students not just academically. We don't just look at test scores, but we're looking at social measures as well as some spiritual measures as well. It costs us about $12,000 a year to educate each student. That number fluctuates a little bit, but the average tuition that a student is paying at Logos Academy is less than $2,000 per kid. We fund that $10,000 gap through generous local philanthropy and through Pennsylvania's educational tax credit program. Logos Academy is grateful to be partnered with other local schools like CSY and other places to be a small part in providing high-quality educational options for families and students who need it the most, especially in Pennsylvania's under-resourced cities. I would humbly urge you and ask this committee to do all in its power to make sure that every child in our Commonwealth has access to an education that gives them opportunity and fills them with hope. Thanks.
Thank you, Reverend. And Dr. Lucan, before you began your testifying virtually today, I forgot to have the members introduce themselves. So if we could have the members introduce themselves. Representative Rigby, if you could start, and we'll go down the line from there.
Well, you just introduced me, but thank you. Representative Rigby from Cambria and Somerset Counties, 71st District.
Good afternoon, Representative Thomas Coates, Cumberland County, 87th District.
Hello, Barb Gleim, Cumberland County, 199th District.
Good afternoon, Robert Ledbetter, Columbia County, the 109th District.
Good afternoon, Representative Dawn Kiefer, Northern York County, 92nd District.
Good afternoon. Born and raised in York County, but defector to Adams County. So, Tornacker, thanks.
And I'm Josh Kale from Beaver and Washington counties.
Joe DeOrsi, 47th Legislative District, which is this district.
Wendy Fink, District 94, which is Southern York County.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, David Rowe, 85th Legislative District, Snyder, Union, Juniata, and Mifflin counties.
Good afternoon. I'm John Schlegel from the 101st District in Lebanon County.
Good afternoon. I'm Tim Twardzik from Schuylkill County, the 123rd, and you have no snow here. We still have.
And we also had Administrator Delosier. Go.
Hi, Cheryl Delosier, 88th District, Cumberland County.
Thank you. Sorry about that. We usually do that beforehand, but got too excited about your testimony, Reverend. We started there. So, Dr. Lucan, if you'd like to begin, he's virtually joining us.
Yes.
Thank you.
Well, good afternoon.
All right, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you. Good afternoon. I'm Marty Lucan. I'm the director of the Fiscal Research and Education Center at EdChoice. We are a 503c nonprofit organization, and we believe in universal choice for all. So I'm here to testify on the fiscal effects of educational choice programs. So first, I want to begin with, what has been said about educational choice. So here are a few things. I think it's an attempt to strip the public schools of the resources that they have, and the resources we have are not enough. I feel that vouchers would contribute to the deterioration of schools. I think vouchers would weaken and in some cases destroy public schools. And my favorite, this will kill public education. So these are real quotes from state legislators, from public school leaders, and others about educational choice programs introduced in their respective states. And I'd be very surprised if you have never heard any version of any of these statements, unless this is your first rodeo to the school choice world. So these claims essentially imply that school choice will spark a mass exodus of students from public schools. And perhaps the most common argument levied against choice is that it will siphon resources from public schools and somehow harm students who remain in them. But is educational choice really about, as one education pundit and columnist put it, the 3 Ds: disrupt, defund, and dismantle? Will choice weaken or destroy the public school system? We've had choice programs around for decades now, and in your great state of Pennsylvania for about 2 decades. To help you evaluate these questions, I want to give you 7 basic facts about choice programs. And I hope that these tidbits can be helpful for you to move forward towards having meaningful conversations about how best to help Pennsylvania students. So fact number 1, in real terms, that's inflation adjusted dollars, spending per student has increased from $14,500 to $22,000 over the last 2 decades. That's since 2000. So that's a 53% increase, again, after taking out the effects of inflation. So does that sound like underfunding to anyone? Now, Pennsylvania introduced its first tax credit scholarship program in 2001. Does it seem like that choice program has been defunding Pennsylvania public schools? Fact number 2, educational choice programs enroll just 2% of all publicly funded students. Now, is that a mass exodus? I would think hardly. Number 3, total public funding for educational choice programs is 1% of all funding devoted to public schools. That's nationwide. So nationwide, 2% of students in choice programs get access to 1% of public funding devoted to public K-12 education. In Pennsylvania, 3% of publicly funded students participate in the tax credit scholarship programs, and those programs get 0.4% of public funding for K-12 in terms of tax credit and tax credit disbursements. So this means that savings are accruing to someone when students leave public schools via these programs. Number 4, in terms of take-up, that is participation as a percentage of eligible students, programs start small and they grow slowly over time. So overall, average participation rates for programs nationwide was 0.46% in the first year. It was 1.7% by the 5th year, and then 2.6% in the 10th year. So again, these programs tend to start slow and they grow slowly. Number 5, the average funding for tax credit scholarship programs is 10 to 16% of what students in those programs would generate for their public schools. This is the Pennsylvania programs. That's like an 84% to 90% markdown. Those funding gaps are huge, and those funding gaps mean that fiscal benefits are accruing to taxpayers in some manner. Number 6, nationwide, choice programs have generated up to $28 billion in cumulative net fiscal benefits. That's about $7,400 per participant. So put another way, for every dollar that's been spent on choice programs nationwide, these programs have generated up to $2.85 in fiscal benefits. Pennsylvania's tax credit scholarship programs have generated net fiscal benefits as high as $8 billion, or more than $12,000 per student for each student in the program. A very conservative estimate for that fiscal effect is about $4 billion in cumulative net fiscal benefits. And number 7, a large body of research indicates that when choice enters the picture, public schools do better for their students. Choice is not leaving students behind. So we at EdChoice, we summarized this research and for this outcome and several other outcomes in a publication called the 123s that can be found on our website. There are 28 studies that have examined the effects of education choice programs on the outcomes of students who remain in public schools. Of these studies, 25 found positive and modest improvements in learning gains by public school students. One study found that expanding the Florida Tax Credit Scholarship Program not only improved learning for students who remained in public schools, but it also reduced absenteeism and suspension rates when school districts were faced with greater competitive pressure. Again, these are benefits to students and real benefits to students who remain in public schools, not harm. So those are just a few, some basic facts that I wanted to share, and hopefully those can be helpful for you when evaluating whether choice harms public schools. So thank you very much.
Thank you. I'm going to open it up to members for questions. If you have a question, let me know. Reverend Anderson, I'd like to ask you just a brief question. As far as we saw the school today, and it was wonderful. Thank you for the tour. We appreciate it. Could you go in a little bit to the results that you've seen from your children academically, and how they compare to local school districts, and what you guys have been doing to get there?
Yeah, I mean, we've seen great success. You know, we're K-12 schools. So that means you've got all your kids are in one location, and so there's some real advantages. There's some challenges with that, but what we've seen thus far is obviously you start with I look at a graduation rate, and look at that. Backing off of that, I mean, we're seeing a tremendous graduation rate, and again, it's easy to say private schools are cherry picking their kids, but the reality is I can tell you and assure you that we are taking students in high school who are testing low percentile and then bringing them and helping them see growth. And that's what we consistently are testing and studying for, is seeing, are we seeing student growth? We utilize MAP testing, right, just as a form of, we're not required to take the PSSAs, as I think you all know, private schools are not required to do that, but we are seeing substantial growth. We see SAT scores that are above national averages, where our counterparts looking at similar demographics would have much lower SAT scores, but consistently good engagement statistics in terms of families being engaged, students being engaged, not seeing huge rates of where students are out of school, missing school. So overall, I think you look at engagement, you look at test scores, and then we look at other types of assessments. Again, like we even do things like, we're a small school, 18 students to a class is kind of our cap. We want our students to be known, so we're looking at how are these kids developing also as human beings? Are they becoming better people? Are they developing character? Dr. King said, right, intelligence plus character, that's the real goal of a true education. It's not just a test score. And so we look at a holistic set of assessments, and what I'm looking for is I want to see these students like where they are in a few years after Logos. And as I see them out in the community, as they're becoming adults, what I see are kids who are coming back into the community, they're contributing, they're useful, they're helpful, and they're good people who are contributing. And that's what we ultimately want to see. So, I mean, that's just a variety of inputs that we've seen through the years and things that we measure.
Representative Dorsey.
Thanks, Chairman Kale. This question is for Dr. Lucan, but Reverend, you're free to chime in as well. So it's my hope, and I'm sure a lot of my colleagues here share this hope, that school choice would be a bipartisan, actually nonpartisan thing, but it tends not to be that way. So my question is kind of a statistical question. It speaks to the popularity of school choice. I wanted to ask you, Dr. Lucan, what you're seeing numbers-wise in Pennsylvania with polling for school choice. It's my understanding that it's popular, but I wanted to hand that to you. What do the numbers say?
Yeah, so we conduct polling monthly, and we tend to find that these programs, they are popular. I believe our last or most recent poll is 74% of respondents of parents are favorable. They support ESAs. They think that it's a good thing. And support for all types of programs tends to be pretty large, but we do see that support is a little higher is a bit higher for ESAs compared to other programs as well. But when it comes to other types of tax credit scholarship programs, charter schools, school vouchers, they all we find that the American public and parents especially are favorable for these.
And if I can chime in on that, I can't speak for all local schools, but I can speak for, I know CSY has experienced substantial growth recently, and I'm sure the demand is there. I know we experience it. I see that York Academy also has some representation here. I think there's substantial demand for choice, and yet I think the challenge is just figuring out how to fund it. The tax credit program, Pennsylvania's program, is a great program, but it is not without its challenges in terms of figuring out how to master it and effectively use it. It's not the most simple program to navigate for schools that want to do choice.
Representative Schlegel.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to our panelists for being here. I've participated in a number of these types of hearings, and oftentimes the concept of workforce and workforce development and recruitment comes up. And in this day and age, I think we're hearing a lot about teacher shortages. So I would ask both of you gentlemen, could you talk a little bit about your initiatives and experiences in recruiting teachers, retaining teachers, this whole concept of teacher shortage. And I'm also interested in your perspective on whether or not the idea of teacher certification comes into play in your experience.
I'm glad to start. You know, finding high quality teachers is critical for a school, I think, as all of us know. And so let me start maybe with a teacher certification. You know, I know as a school we really do strive to find teachers who are certified. That finding qualified teachers is becoming more challenging. I see in numerous sectors. I would say nursing, policing, and in teaching. I think we're seeing more and more challenges just in terms of recruiting. That is certainly for us as a school is driving up the cost of what we're doing. I think teacher retention, though, is something that's also, it's not just about math and numbers, it's actually about the quality of the institution that you're running. So I think it's a lot about leadership of the institution. Teachers, what we find, teachers want to teach. It's shocking, right? The teachers just want to teach. They don't want to be bothered by too much by administrators, right? So sorry, administrators. I know you're a former administrator. Teachers would like to teach. Teachers aren't satisfied teaching in environments where they're strictly forced to teach to a test. Teachers got into the business because they wanted to impact kids. And so, you know, I think that's got to be a critical part of the discussion about what teacher retention looks like. Are we creating environments where teachers can thrive and where they feel satisfied? Yes, where they can make a good income, make a decent income, but can we create environments where those teachers will thrive? Let me stop there for let Dr. Lucan chime in.
Yeah, so this isn't an area that I work on specifically, but there are a few things that I can tie choice to this. So I think that teaching has not been viewed as a respectable profession. And what I mean by that is that I think that how we compensate teachers, how you know, the environments that they teach in, you know, I think that we could do better. So, for example, some of our work, we look at staffing trends in states across the U.S., and we find that when it comes to hiring, school districts, they favor hiring non-teaching staff at greater rates than teachers. And when you compare this to student enrollment growth, the hiring of non-teaching staff greatly outpaces the rate of student enrollment growth, and it also outpaces the rate of teachers. And so this has had an effect, I think, of for one thing, keeping salaries flat. And there are other factors as well. But for example, in my home state of Indiana, teacher salaries have been flat for decades. And so I think when choice enters the picture, and when you expand choice and make it meaningful and broad, what you're going to do is you're going to switch the incentives. You're going to realign the incentives so districts are going to really pay attention to the things that really matter. And one of the things that really matter in the classroom for student outcomes, obviously, is teachers. So that's just a few thoughts that I had.
Thank you very much. Some very interesting insights. I appreciate it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Representative Ledbetter.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Reverend, thank you so much for your generosity this morning and the tour at Logos. Very eye-opening and encouraging to see the work that you guys are doing. Dr. Lucan, thank you for joining us remotely this morning, or this afternoon, rather. Dr. Lucan, you did an excellent job in your testimony in dispelling some of the more common myths. And myths is perhaps a generous term. I'd classify some of this stuff more as misinformation, which is ironic given the context is around education and the education of our youth. The question that I have is in two parts. One, how would both of you describe the importance of the role of messaging in turning the tide around this discussion, where students, parents, educators in certain geographies embrace school choice? And then in that same vein, when you look at areas like Logos and academies like Logos. Can you share with us some best practices that you have seen or implemented, Reverend? And then for you, Dr. Lucan, perhaps outside geographies that we can take back as advocates of school choice to our districts so that we can do our part in turning that tide and driving an honest conversation around this topic.
Yeah, so to your first question about messaging, I think it's very important. And whenever you're having conversations, I think you need to bring it back to who is being affected most by choice, and that's the students. So these programs are to help families and students, and it's a simple idea. It's to provide them with more options so that they can find the best learning environment that best meets their needs as the parents see fit. And so I think that in the media, on social media, we see a lot of negative messaging, which is unfortunate. As you mentioned earlier, I think this really should be a bipartisan issue, and choice it's uplifting, it's positive, and I think that having and putting forth a positive, uplifting message is going to help and persuade and change hearts and minds. And then second, to the question about best practices, it depends on I think it depends on the state and their for example, funding systems. Each state is going to be very different. So how these programs are designed, design is going to be key, and regulations are going to be key as well. And so some practices, we do know that in some states where programs are very highly regulated, for example, in Louisiana, they require all private schools to administer the state test to any student that is in the voucher program. It doesn't allow top up. It doesn't allow families to pay above the voucher amount. So there's a cap on the amount of money that the schools are receiving in terms of public funding. And then there are other regulations as well. For example, private schools they have to take everybody. For example, they're not selective in enrollment. And so what these types of regulations have had in Louisiana is that, recent studies on the test scores of students participating in the voucher program showed very large negative effects. And there's a good reason for that. 1/3 of private schools in Louisiana have signed up and participate in the voucher program there. So 2/3 of private schools have said, no, thank you. And it turns out that the 1/3 of schools that have signed up, those schools tend to be, they had declining enrollment before participating in the program. They tended to have a lot of financial challenges. And so this is I think a lesson on, how design matters. And this is a case where very strong regulations created a disincentive for the best schools to be participating in this program. And I think that you want to be careful and you want to design programs so that you're inviting all types of schools to participate, especially the good schools.
I would add that I think in terms of messaging, start with that. I believe like right here in York, Pennsylvania, right in York City specifically, it's a question of fairness. You can, if your child is born in one zip code, and I could take you down to just barely north of Country Club Road. If you're born north of Country Club Road, you're going to go to one particular school that's one of the lower ranking, one of the lowest ranking in the state, and that is no slam against the good people that are there in that particular school district who are doing the best that they can. And you can cross the street and end up in one of the very best school districts, not only in the area but also in the country, right? So where your child is born is going to dictate what kind of education they're going to get. It's going to dictate the likelihood that they'll graduate. Low 60%, that low 60 percentile is the graduation rate in districts that are like the one that I'm describing. I think that's effectively a question of when we talk about messaging, that's an issue of fairness, and it's a form of modern segregation that I think is just a radical injustice to kids. It's terrible, and we could talk at length about the length of that. I refuse as a public school leader to get dragged into a war with public schools. That's what I feel like the fight continues to be. I would, as I was saying to Representative Schlegel over lunch, I would love to work with our public school folks who have gripes and legitimate gripes about mandates that are on their schools that make teaching difficult. I wish we could work together to reduce some of those mandates so that they would have maybe a little more freedom, because I understand they look at folks like me and folks that operate in charter school and they say, well, you don't have the same mandates. I get it. Then let's work together to reduce those mandates, and let's give every kid in Pennsylvania an opportunity to receive a high-quality education. I don't think right now we don't have enough inventory in the private school movement in the United States to actually take a big exodus from the public schools. If, for instance, in Pennsylvania, suddenly 10% of students said, we're done with public schools, we're going to go to private schools, there aren't enough seats in private schools in Pennsylvania to do that. We would have a problem on our hands. We'd have to start a bunch of new schools. So I am also as a private school leader, I am pro-public school. I live in New York City. I want to see my kids who are neighbors, I want to see them thrive. If they can thrive at Logos Academy, I'm glad to have them. But the reality is we have limited seats, so we need to do everything we can to create more seats and to make sure that their schools that they're attending can thrive better. And if that means eliminating some mandates that don't work, then let's do that.
Thank you both for your feedback. This has been an encouraging day. Again, when we look at these disingenuous regulations that hinder the process, I think what you said, Reverend, summarized it perfectly. This is not about us versus them or one philosophy versus another. This is about every child in Pennsylvania receiving a high-quality education, and I appreciate the work you both are doing. Thank you.
Representative Kiefer.
Thank you. Reverend Anderson, what is your current wait list at Logos?
Our current wait list, so we're at 210 total students. I think we probably have, what we're going to end up having is probably at least 20 students right now, but the reality is we have an oversubscribed kindergarten. We really should be adding a second kindergarten. Now that we have the space, we'll be able to do that, probably not this year, but next year. That number can change, 20 to 40, some 50 new students a year. A lot of times for us, we won't see those numbers until late, even into the summer. A lot of families get it done early, but sometimes we won't even see those numbers. So the current numbers right now, it's probably 20 to 30 students.
Okay. Which is relatively low. And I think we get back to some of what you said, right? This isn't us against them. So we have some great public schools around here where students should have some flexibility. So as a mother of three, every single one of my children have unique needs. So how do you meet those needs in a small school if they have special needs or just a different learning style? How is your private school meeting those needs?
If we're talking about learning style, I'd say that's one of the advantages you have as a small school, is because you have teachers' ability to differentiate in a classroom at a different level. So our cap on classrooms is 18 students. So that's a self-administered cap. We said because we want those kids to be known. We want to know what's going on in those kids' lives when they walk in the room, and then we want to be able to teach to that particular style. My wife served for some time in a local public school, interestingly, as an aide, and helped out with reading. And she would see kindergarten classes with upwards of 37 students. 37 students, and many of those students with learning plans and needs. That is not tenable to be able to have that many kids in a classroom. So teaching, learning style is one that I think is better adapted by having smaller smaller class sizes. We don't receive public funding, as you know, and so our ability to serve a special needs population as much as we would like to is significantly hampered by the fact that we're out raising about 80% of our funding as it is. So we do try to serve students, and we do have some help from the LIU, Lincoln Intermediate Unit, that does provide some supports. We hire some of our own supports. But the reality is there are just limitations. But they're limitations that are based on the fact that we're raising most of our budget and we're not publicly funded. I think it's a very unfair accusation that gets leveled against private schools. It almost sounds like you don't want special needs population. That's the furthest thing from the truth. We would love to serve more students with needs. We just don't have, when you're raising all your resources, right? There are just going to be some limitations.
Right. Do you have any community partnerships that you utilize within your school?
Absolutely. A school like ours, we are a community school. It's one of our core tenets. We can't exist without significant community partnerships, and we think that helps the fabric of the school just by having those good relationships.
What about academic partnerships? Are there any maybe apprenticeship type things that you do with community organizations?
We do. We have workforce development was mentioned. That is something that we want, again, because we're small, we can get our kids exposed, substantially to local businesses, and we have a program where students are getting internships, they're getting exposure to opportunities early on that get them, that exposure to a particular career they think they might want to go in. We'll bring those folks in, we send the students out into those opportunities, and our goal ultimately is hopefully some of those folks would actually help pay for college for those students, and then they stay and work here in the community.
Right, and if they come back to our community, that's
even
what
better.
we're hoping for. And one last question, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. And the last question I have, I'm sorry, I almost forgot about what it was. When you're bringing those partnerships in, you're helping those students, you're getting those dollars. You mentioned the EITC and that it can be very cumbersome. What are the challenges you're having with the EITC program as far as navigating it?
Yeah, so, well, as you know, one is the program statewide is oversubscribed. So there's just not enough money in the program. And it's being tapped all across the Commonwealth. And so this last year we brought in about $1.7 million. If you want to talk about waiting lists, I have donors that are on waiting lists. I have donors who'd be giving to me, and I can't take the money because there's not enough credit there. Right. The challenge that I would say that I would love to see fixed in Pennsylvania is you end up having, as a school, to have expertise in understanding the program. So literally, I have one person that's a full-time employee on my staff who just works with the tax credit program, because you have to be conversant with corporate, not just accountants, corporate accountants, and understand corporate tax law in order to get them to understand the program. And then the process of applying is cumbersome. And the other thing, and I keep looking back at my friend Andy Bell, we have to go find those donors too. And what you'd find in a place like York is, there are plenty of generous people, but places like, I think you all know, places like Philadelphia, Pittsburgh, they're going to get substantial access to those credits, and then there's sort of dollars that the rest of the state is kind of fighting for. I know this is a common theme. But we have to go find those individuals, then we have to go apply for the credit, and then we have to hope that the credit is there. And the application, the DCED department, I want to give a shout out to Jim O'Donnell. I think they do a great job of processing a challenging program. But the reality is that it'd be much more simple if we just had a per student allocation, that we'd be able to say, here's a per student allocation per student, and then we're not out running around like crazy salespeople trying to get people to sign up for the EITC program.
Great, thank you very much.
Representative Rigby.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, panelists, for participating today. Listening to all the testimonies, I have a wife who's a first grade teacher in the public schools, a father who's a retired principal in the public schools. And when we talk about choice, I look at some of the students that are in my wife's class that wouldn't make it to Logos. And so how do we change this? We want everybody to have a quality education, but when it comes to the choice, now I sent my two children to a private school. I paid for that. But that private school also had the opportunity to say, no, you couldn't come here. Public schools don't have that option. In Pennsylvania, we're required to educate, and we take all children, where the private schools don't have to. So how do we balance this out? Of course, Logos can be a great academy, and I love what you're doing there, and you're at 200, could go 400, and down the street, there are 5,000 kids in that school or something. I mean, how do we get those kids into a program like yours so they're getting that same opportunity? So when I look at choice and I hear choice, I guess my question is, whose choice is it, the schools or the students?
Yeah, I mean, ideally, I would deal with that. I'm not speaking as a school leader, just as a dad who lives in a district that's a failing district. I'd love for it to be the family's choice. I think the simple answer to that is funding, right? Is funding. It's easy to look at private schools and say you don't educate special needs students. We're also not receiving the per student allocation that public schools receive to do that. So when you open up funding, when you open up access to funding and begin to, I think it'd be completely fair for legislators to say we would like to see, you have special needs programs. I would love to respond to that, but without funding to be able to do that, that's impossible. That's near impossible. It's literally, I don't have the dollars in front of me. I'm sure Dr. Lucan probably has those dollars. The cost to educate a special needs student versus a typical, you heard 22,000. The number is dramatically higher for a special needs student.
When we look at numbers that they spend on troubled students where they've got to send them to an alternative school, again, multiplies, where the private schools don't have that cost. They don't have that. They can send that student back to their district and say, no, you're back at your local school, your public school again, and again, it gets dropped back onto the public school.
I think it's a fair question and a fair observation, and one that I actually agree with you. I would just simply say, without funding, without saying there's no funding tied to that, right? To schools, to private schools specifically. I can't speak for charter schools, but to private schools specifically who have no funding, right? You're asking us to do something that we have zero funding to do, and I would love to be able to address that problem, but we simply can't do it without actually having some funding to do that.
I understand. Thank you very much. I appreciate your response.
Representative Gleim.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you, Reverend Anderson. I had a quick question for you. I actually served as a school board member on the Capital Area Intermediate Unit Board years ago. And so as you know, these are like 20 school board, members on one of those IU boards. And we decided to spin off a charter school called Capital Area School of the Arts. So there was some, common ground there, like you're talking about, seeing a need in our area. And of course, also the CASA, it's called, has almost a 100% graduation rate after they actually got off the ground and running, which is amazing. So my question is, what academic and artistic interests, but mostly academic, can your students pursue as a private student, and if charter, that too, outside of a traditional public school?
You mean within our own program?
Correct.
Yeah. So that it's unfortunately in the local public schools, specifically in urban districts, what you typically see is when budgets get tight, it's arts and drama and programs and music that get cut. And as a person who loves the arts and loves music, I think that's a shame, because that's really, again, schools are not just about test scores. It's not just about learning to read is great, and we need kids to learn to read. Math is great. But being a human being is much broader than just math and reading scores, right? I mean, the earth that God has given us is a beautiful place, and thank God for artists, and thank God for music, because it's good for us in so many ways. And so in our program, we make sure that the kids are actually immersed from kindergarten through 12th grade in those programs. So there's lots of opportunities. That's one of the community partnerships, or types of community partnerships, is where we're working with local arts organizations to either send our kids over to like a Dream Rights here locally, or to bring a group in, and they'll run programs where our students with other students from other local schools will do plays and do productions, and they participate in local orchestras and things like that, that in addition to the programs that we run, because we think those things are vital to being a human being.
Yep, thank you. I know that since you have low class sizes as well, the differentiation that's there allows students to pursue their interest, I think, in more depth, is what I would say there. So thank you very much.
Representative Rowe.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Dr. Lucan, I have in front of me your 2021 publication, The Fiscal Effects of School Choice. And for anyone who hasn't read it, it is a fantastic piece that really references the hard data. A lot of the education discussion kind of gets bogged down in the anecdotal evidence, but looking at the raw numbers, the raw data is really an eye-opening experience. I want to reference one of the studies that you highlight. Particularly, you reference the private school choice and crime study that was published in the Social Science Quarterly. You also reference Corey DeAngelis's article referencing school choice and the effects on social issues. I also want to read a quote from your book that, quote, although this report focuses on the direct fiscal effects of choice programs on taxpayers, programs provide potential indirect fiscal benefits as well. For example, some research suggests that choice programs reduce crime, teen pregnancy, adolescent suicide rates, and mental health issues as adults. And the reason I think that's important is that so much of the discussion surrounding education funding focuses on the system itself, but I think we need to realize that education dollars are not for systems, they are for students. And we want to speak to as you just said, Reverend, you said so perfectly, education is about more than just test scores. So I wanted to sort of teeing off what you had mentioned to us previously, Reverend, on the tour about how your facility provides more than just a place for education. It is a communal place, a gathering place for children in the community to find a safe haven, an outlet for recreation and gathering that protects them from those detrimental societal effects. Could you speak to sort of that personal touch, that mission of your school that's beyond just getting a good enough test score to kick them out to college?
Yeah. Well, I think that loops back to that idea that kids are more than just test scores, or one author said they're not just brains on a stick that we dump academic content into there, but their minds, souls, hearts, bodies. They're embodied kids that live in neighborhoods, and they have families, and they have dreams that hopefully we don't shatter too early. But the reality is for kids that live in where we live, kids will see violence in their communities. Last year, I believe, we had 23 homicides in New York. I've had students that have literally watched people die on the sidewalk who were gunned down, right? So for our kids, in some respects, giving them opportunities outside of the classroom, outside of the regular day, can be sort of life or death. Right? It's about getting them exposure to other opportunities. One of the things that pains me the most is to think that Logos Academy in any way would be a ticket out of York. I don't want to see that. We want people to stay here. We want to educate them. We want them to help us tackle the challenges and problems that we have right here. So for us, that means using our facilities well, using them in ways that teach them about more than their minds. I mean, we're sitting in a gym right now. I mean, our kids actually partner up with CSY, and they play basketball here with CSY students, and that's neat to see that together. That's about building community together with people right here in our own county. Kids learning about their bodies and what it means to be healthy. I mean, not something we talk about quite a bit, but York County has had a significant challenge with health and obesity. So giving kids opportunities to be physically active, right? That's more than test scores. Kids are more. You're going to hear me say this over and over, right? Getting kids exposure to local churches and faith groups who can also help, who are helping form virtue and character. Because as you all know, like we need good people who are going to be citizens, who are engaged in our public processes, and who are working to build up our communities and restore these places that once were really great communities.
And you referenced something that actually led perfectly into my next question. You know, you said you would hate to be the catalyst for ever having a child leave the York area, right? I mean, the recent census data that showed Pennsylvania had a net loss of 40,000 people this last time around. And, you know, we're losing to states like West Virginia and Arizona, states that do have robust choice programs. And, I mean, that's not to say that that's the exclusive reason that people are leaving, but it's definitely something that could be contributed to it. And some of the largest opponents of choice in education will often, as Dr. Lucan referenced previously, they'll reference the cost and say that, well, if a student chooses to, you know, either take advantage of a tax credit or they'll choose to go to a charter school, that it's costing the district money. But by that same logic, with 40,000 people leaving the state, all of that money is also leaving. So that argument kind of falls flat when you realize that people will, you know, move from one district to another just to have the child have a chance to attend a different or better school, even though it might still be another government-run school. So why should it be any different if they choose to attend a private or a charter school? So Dr. Lucan, I'm not sure if there's any data on this specifically, but is there any data that references choice programs and the longevity of a community, or, you know, the lack thereof, and the amount of students that would, you know, choose to leave the area?
Unfortunately, there isn't really much data or research that has looked at that. But there is plenty of data, though, that, as you pointed out, that does look at these the non-fiscal and you know, the other effects that, for example, civic outcomes. We know that that these programs increase tolerance for students. And, you know, students are more likely to engage in, they're more likely to allow, you know, groups that they don't like to be able to give a speech at their school or to write an op-ed. And the parents get involved as well. When parents and families have choice, the parents get you know, even more involved in their children's education. And they also, some studies find that they are engaged in more civic behavior as well. So, but yeah, I think that it's hard to track movement across state lines, especially at the K-12 level. But we do hear anecdotes that, you know, these programs are certainly for some families a draw, I think.
If I may, one of the things in school choice that I don't think it's enough discussion. So right here in York, Pennsylvania, York City, I've lived in York City now for 17 years. When I moved to York City years ago, people told me not to move to York City because the schools were bad and violence was bad. And we moved to York City and we found Logos Academy. That's actually how I started first as a dad. I wasn't CEO first. I was just a dad. And I had a first grader. We had moved from West York to York City. One of the things that we're seeing, and I think as school choice options increases in cities, is actually the willingness for families to move into those cities and then begin economically investing in those cities that otherwise are not seeing that kind of investment. Because what family, when you're moving, you're going to go online and you're going to look at school data right away, and you're going to see what school performance data looks like. And the schools are bad, you're not going to move into that district unless you know there are options available. And that's what we're starting to see now. We're actually seeing more families move into the city and begin to invest in the city. So that's one, and I'd be curious to see what data exists out there. I'm not aware of the data, but the connection to economic development in our urban cores that are struggling.
Well, thank you very much, Dr. Lucan, for all of your hard work. Thank you very much, Reverend Anderson, for your being a gracious host this morning. Thank you for your testimony. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Representative Fink.
Good afternoon. My first question was about special needs, which I think you did a really good job of answering from the previous questions. One of my children has some learning issues, and it's really hard. We're currently a homeschool family because it's really hard to find a private school that's able to meet her needs. So I would encourage, I would greatly support anything that you can do to kind of draw those special needs children in, because we need good schools too.
Thank you.
My second question. You don't use PSSAs, so what testing are you using to see what their academic standard is? And if the public school is using PSSAs and you were using something different than that's not really apples to apples. We've done a lot of different state testings, and they're not all the same.
Correct.
So how are you comparing where the student's level is when they come from the public school as to where they are when they come if you're using different testing?
There's a variety of different tests, especially when rolling tests, things like DIBELS, if you're familiar with those types of tests, that we'll use just to make some assessments. We also use NWEA's MAP testing, which is used by numerous public districts around the country, as large as the New York City's the New York City School District. So MAP testing actually does provide some correlation to the PSSAs. They claim it's very accurate. So that is one way we do MAP testing twice a year on students to assess where are those students, and where are those students, how are they growing. In the school choice movement, I'll say something that'll be controversial to some of my folks who love school choice. I'm an advocate of school choice. I have no problem with being transparent and publishing that data. I don't think any private school should hide that data. I mean, the reality is that we'll stand by. We have challenges. We use that data to analyze how are we doing, where are we struggling, where do we need to grow. I think that's one of the things we could do in this movement, in the school choice movement, is probably do more transparency. And I think, hopefully that would show the case. I don't think we have anything to hide from. I can tell you we serve, I told you, a challenging student population. And so we try to be out there with our data and be as transparent as we can, because we realize education is hard, but it's also how you win parents over, is just by being transparent.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, we don't have any further questions. I wanted to say thank you, Reverend. Thank you, Doctor. I don't think it's an overstatement to say that education is the #1 issue right now in Pennsylvania, and the status quo just isn't acceptable. So thank you for your testimony today. I'm sure we'll be reaching back out and looking forward to hearing more from you.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, our next panel is a parents and student panel. We have Antaria Graham, she's a parent at York Academy Charter School, Carol Thompson, a parent at Christian School of York, and a student, Eden Turnow, at Christian School of York as well. If you all could come on up. Yeah, don't. Turnow, excuse me. I'm absolutely terrible at pronouncing names. If mine wasn't so easy, I'd mispronounce my own name, so please don't take offense. All right. Okay. All right, so we'll just get started. Ms. Graham, if you'd like, the floor is yours.
Hello, everyone. My name is Antaria Graham. I am a parent of 3 children who attend York Academy Regional Charter School. I am a wife and a mother. All my children have attended York Academy since kindergarten. York Academy is a 3-district school, charter school. It combines suburban, central, and York City together. I believe that creates a learning environment within itself with the children. They learn their differences as well as their similarities. And before I go any further, I want to also mention that I am not from York City. I am originally from New England. That's where I grew up. So I don't have any experience, positive or negative, with the York City schools. So I don't want to sound negative towards city schools at all. But I'm just speaking from my own personal experience. As we as parents raise our children, it is common that we draw from our own personal experiences from our childhood as we raise them. We remember things that we like and things that we didn't like, and we incorporate that with new information we learn as for parenting as we go along. Growing up, due to circumstances that were beyond my mother's control, my education had to take a back seat. It was not the priority. We moved around several times. I went to 5 different elementary schools within 3 states. Yeah. So, but the positive thing from that is that from my experience, I learned that not all schools are the same. Even within the same district, they are not all the same. I learned that there is a disconnect between the transition from elementary school to middle school, and from middle school to the high school. Teachers, administrators, school boards, teachers, parents are not all on the same page when it comes to the educational development and expectations of their children. And in one school, I'd be academically ahead. In another school, I'd be academically behind. And sometimes you could even see the differences from classroom to classroom. As a child, I could tell you from those schools, I could tell you which schools had their stuff together, and I can tell you which schools didn't. As a kid, I could tell you that. And as a kid, I made a mental note to myself that when I became a mother, I wanted better for my children. Some years later, after I finished school, I came across a school in Connecticut called Mrs. Porter's School. Oh my goodness. If you don't know what Mrs. Porter's School is, it's an all-girl boarding school. It is absolutely adorable. And I said, you know what, when I become a wife and then a mother, I want my children to go to Mrs. Porter's School. I fell in love with the environment. I fell in love with the curriculum. I just loved it. And I just didn't realize that the institutional method of education that I had was not the only way. There was more than just one way. And I didn't know that until I stumbled upon that school. Well, fast forward, I no longer live in Connecticut, and I had all 3 boys. So Mrs. Porter's, is out of the question. But I held on to what was important to me was that I wanted my children to have a unique educational experience. Not just learning how to read and write, but I wanted them to have traditional and out-of-the-box learning experiences. My husband and I, have found that at York Academy. They are so out of the box at times that this mom, who is not very interested in being out in nature, has found herself knee-deep in a creek, cleaning trash out of it. I know my family thinks that the thought of it is even funny because they know me, but it was important to my kids. I've also helped them put up birdhouses around the city, helping my 3rd grader build water filtration systems, raising money for their pen pals who live in 3rd countries who rely on these personal water filtration systems for their daily use of water. At York Academy, our children are taught how and why they learn is just as important as what they learn. Built into the International Baccalaureate curriculum are a set of 10 core values. They are taught to help to shape children to be better people and lifelong learners. For the sake of time, I will not go through them all, but I just want to mention 3 that have really impacted our family. The first one is principled. Are you being honest? As moms and dads here, I know a pet peeve, none of us like a lying child. Tell me the truth, right? Being a parent has taught my boys that even in the hardest moments, it is important to take ownership of your own actions. This world could use a lot more honest people. The second one is risk taker. My oldest son is the most cautious kid you would ever want to meet. We never left the playground with boo-boos. If it didn't look safe, he wasn't touching it. He was not going to be involved with it at all. But I never thought about how him not being a risk taker would bleed into his education and his way of learning. It takes courage to raise your hand in the classroom and ask questions when you don't understand something. Children take risks sounding out new words when first learning how to read out loud in school. My son is now 15. We no longer have those problems of him being a risk taker, but we do have to come back and remind him about being principled and balanced. The last one I want to mention is just communication. Communicating is not just about being an eloquent speaker. It is also means being a person that listens to understand. Even if it means that you have to learn a new language to do it. Starting in kindergarten all the way to 12th grade, York Academy students have to take a Spanish class. That is a part of their curriculum. I am grateful for York Academy. I was given the opportunity. I love how it also gives the opportunity for families to be involved. Expectations are reinforced at home and in the school, which leads to a much better learning environment. I believe when parents and teachers create partnerships, children are less likely to fall through the cracks. Secondly, my second son, Riley, is extremely and painfully shy. A large, overpopulated school system for a kid like that would easily have fallen through the cracks. The smaller classroom settings at York Academy with the 2 teachers inside the room have provided him with the support he needed. They have partnered with us in building his confidence and creating a space for him to blossom. I wish you all could have been at York Academy last Friday to see my son take the mic and sing a song at their modern band conference. When he grabbed the mic, the whole audience paused because they were like, is Riley really getting ready to sing? We were all surprised. And the beauty of that night was that his kindergarten teacher was there. And without saying a word to me, she looked at me in astonishment and said, wow. And back to her, I said, yes, look what you all have created a space for him to grow. She was astonished to see his personal growth. Lastly, having a choice as a parent comes down to 2 things, love and desire. We love our children and we desire for them to have a brighter future. It's important for parents to have a say at how that bright future may be attained for our children. Based off of our own personal experience, values, morals, and finances, a desire from our children is created from that. Having a choice has been a blessing to my family and to my children. It has also helped me keep a promise that I made to my children before they were even born. That promise was to provide them with a better educational experience than I received. Thank you.
Ms. Turnow.
Good afternoon. I'm Eden Turnow, and I came to Christian School of York as a freshman, and I'm now a senior. Becoming a student at CSY has impacted my life in so many positive ways. I've been passionate about music for as long as I can remember. I started playing piano when I was 4 and learned other instruments along the way. I started singing and playing keyboard on the worship team at my church in 5th grade. Now at CSY, I sing and play piano for the choir and get to lead worship on the praise team for our school chapels. Another big part of my life is volleyball. I started playing about 7 years ago at college camps, on different club teams, and I've spent summers playing beach volleyball. I've been on the varsity team at CSY for the last 3 years, and it's been an incredible experience. Besides my faith, music and volleyball have always been a huge part of who I am. Coming to Christian School of York has helped me realize new things about my 2 passions, and I'm starting to see just how much that's impacted me. At the end of my sophomore year, one of my teachers, Mrs. Kemper, told me that God had put it on her heart to encourage me to start to step into leadership roles. I wasn't too excited about that. It made me kind of nervous, and I didn't intend to pursue it. But I found out you can't ignore God or Mrs. Kemper. Amen. She suggested I apply to join student council, so reluctantly, I did. I was worried that it was going to put my already demanding schedule over the top, and my schedule is crazy, but it's been so worth it. I am now the vice president of the Student Council. This year, I've learned so much about leadership, teamwork, and recognizing others' gifts and encouraging them to use them. And I have to admit, I'm loving it. Growing in my leadership skills has spilled over into all aspects of my life. I applied and became one of the captains of the volleyball team for the past 2 years. As a captain, I implemented a weekly devotional time for the team. I'm so grateful to be at a school where I am encouraged and challenged, and where I can feel myself growing in my confidence and in my leadership skills. I haven't decided on a career path yet, but I know that the impact of these experiences will positively influence my upcoming years at Messiah University and the rest of my life. One of my favorite verses, Colossians 3:23, says, "Whatever you do, work at it with all your heart, as if working for the Lord and not for human masters." I'm no longer afraid of new opportunities. I'm excited to go all in with everything I do without hesitation, and not just for the people around me, but for God.
Thank you. Ms. Thompson?
I would like to thank you for devoting your time and efforts to this important matter of school choice. I would like to thank the Lord who practices steadfast love, justice, righteousness in earth, and for these things he delights. The Bible says, "What does it profit a man to gain the whole world and forfeit his soul?" That was the standard my husband and I used to discern if we would send our children to public school. They might gain a world-class education, but the toxic anti-God indoctrination would do irreparable damage to their souls. Benjamin Rush, the father of the American public school system, said, "The great enemy of the salvation of man, in my opinion, never invented a more effective means of limiting Christianity from the world than by persuading mankind that it was improper to read the Bible at schools." We chose not to send our children to public school and therefore never received the benefits of our tax dollars. We have paid for each of our children's education 2 times. School choice would put things back in the right order, returning the authority of the educational funds back to the parents. Corey DeAngelis argues that the federal government already gives money to the college students in the form of Pell Grants. The student decides what college he or she wants to attend, not the government. The same is true with the GI Bill. The veteran decides what school he wants to give his scholarship money to, and not the government. Taxpayer-funded preschool programs such as Head Start follow the same model. Parents decide which preschool they want their child to attend. It's not their zip code, and it's not their government. We don't force low-income families to spend their food stamp dollars at government-run grocery stores. They can go anywhere they want, Walmart, Target, or other similar stores. It would be so beneficial to our children if we would apply the same logic to our K-12 education. We would fund children, not bureaucracy. In almost every area of life, parents choose how to spend money, even when it comes from the government. Choice is the norm in pre-K and higher education. So why not K-12? School choice initiatives return the money to the intended beneficiaries of the funding, students and parents. When faced with competition, public schools do, in fact, up their game. 20 out of 21 studies reported by the American Federation for Children found that school choice improved public schools' academic outcomes. In a recent interview on CBN News, the Iowa Governor Kim Reynolds shared that a superintendent was expressing his dislike over the recently passed expanded open enrollment law, but that same superintendent vowed and determined he will make sure his school district is the school of choice. This is a very desirable outcome. Prager University cited a study published in May 2021 that reveals increased competition from expanding private school choices in Florida, improved academic and behavioral outcomes in the nearby public schools. In every area of commerce, competition invariably leads to a better product. Satisfied customers return, unsatisfied customers go elsewhere. According to the American Federation for Children, the vast majority of credible evidence shows that the school choice programs improve academic outcomes, not only the program participants, but also the students in public schools. It saves taxpayers money and reduces racial segregation. The Bible says the fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge, but fools despise wisdom and instruction. In 1963, public schools became a foolish system by banning prayer and public Bible reading. This is what has brought us to the current condition of our public school today, described in James 3:16. For where envy and self-seeking exist, confusion and every evil thing are there. Let us, through this venture of school choice, provide a means of escape for the deplorable condition of the public schools, to embark upon the desired havens of those schools that are congruent with the value systems of the parents and the students. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, the members have questions. Please let me know. Ms. Graham, I wanted to ask you a couple questions about your experience at York Charter School. You mentioned you had 3 children.
Yes.
Is that correct? And do all of them attend that school?
Yes.
And was there ever an issue with getting into the school, or how did that work out in your
No,
experience?
I just had to fill out the application, and that was it.
Okay. And what grades, or are they graduated? How?
My oldest is in 10th grade. He's 15. My second is 13. He's in 7th. And I have a bonus baby who is in 1st grade. He is 6 years old.
Great. All right. That's the questions I had. I was just curious about that. Representative Kiefer.
Thank you. I share your passion of, looking back and reflecting on your education and then trying to bring that forward. I was, I thought everything was great in my education until I got to college, and I was told to rewrite papers and what level they thought I was at when I was an honors student. So I thought, and it's all relative and it's all different for each of them. So I had the same kind of passion for my kids. It's just meeting them where they were, and those are all unique needs of those children, and my demographics are very similar. I have a kind of a pseudo bonus baby as well, so who's younger than my oldest. So I appreciate that. And your experience at this program, has it been, is there anything, I'm probably answering my own question, but anything where you think it's lacking from, you're in the York City School District?
Yes.
That they're not, that they don't have access to there where they would have access to at they don't have at your current school, where they're missing out on anything.
Do I feel like
at the public school?
Do I feel like they're missing anything out? Missing out at not being at the public school?
Or just programming that might be lacking, or there's any disadvantages to.
The only thing is that York Academy is a smaller school, so this was their first year to have a basketball team, which my oldest son really enjoyed participating in. Sports would be the only thing that is different, but they can go back. They still can participate in their local school district's sports activities if they would like to. So I guess no.
Okay. And Eden, I have a question for you. So you said you started the Christian school as a freshman, right? So where were you at prior to that?
I was at Central York School District.
Okay. And what was your transition? Because that's quite a large school.
Yes.
I'm in the Northern York School District, so it's a much smaller district, and my kids went to Catholic school prior to that. So that's a big transition from York Central to there. How did that work for you?
Well, honestly, it exceeded all my expectations, because I was coming here, obviously, as a new student. I never changed schools before. I'd been at Central all my life, and so I wasn't really sure what to expect in any other school. But it was just incredible. I was welcomed by everyone here, and I was just overwhelmed at the amount of kindness and the attention I could have on my personal education. And yeah, it was great.
So you had no issues
No,
transitioning?
not at all.
That's great. All right, thank you.
Representative Schlegel.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And actually, thank you to everyone for being here, because we not only have students represented and parents and just caring and loving adults, but we also, I can tell, have soon-to-be students. So parents, hold on to those little ones as long as you can, because it won't be too long till you'll be sending them off to school. But my question for Eden and also the parents, you know, hopefully we continue to celebrate in this Commonwealth, but also in this country, the diversity and being different and the coming together. But my question to you in that regards is this: how would you like to see it be handled as some greater disparities of differences among parents, among students, in terms of raising children, what's important in terms of the value system? How would you all come together at your particular schools to make everyone feel welcome and to be able to work together, even though you have maybe some very distinct differences, maybe even distinct differences than what parents and students have going to your schools right now? So if there were a number of differences that were different than your value system, and folks would come into your schools the way parents and community folks come into school board meetings in public schools now, and they say, well, I want this, I want that, and you kind of find yourselves as board members into power struggles, and you have one set of parents that have these values, another set of parents have these values. How have you in the past, how would you see moving forward as parents, as students, that you would deal with that?
Well, so my experience was at, previously my kids were at Bible Baptist and at CSY, so that's part of the choice, is that you're coming in with like-mindedness. And that's what I'm trying to avoid at the public school, because it's constant strife, constant battle. So in a brewing, stormy environment, then learning becomes secondary. So that is the choice, is to be with people that are like-minded, to eliminate that.
For me, I think in the past, when I've come across my children with with a parent who has different views than I do, I think that communication element comes in, where you listen to people to understand and not to judge or to respond. So I think that if we keep the priority is our children. Everything else is secondary. And so it is important that we respect each other, that we listen to each other. And we have meetings. We have at York Academy, there are required 25 hours a year that parents have to come into the school and participate and be involved in one way or the other. There's lots of different things you can do, but in that, you come across parents, and where there's lots of discussions. There are people that we have things in common, and there's people that we don't have things in common. But I think the main way to handle all the situations, no matter what anybody's opinions is or values, is that you need to handle and approach every situation, every child, every parent with respect.
I couldn't agree more. Didn't mean to throw you a curve, but thank you very much for sharing. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Representative Eckert.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you guys for being here. Thanks for everyone that's in attendance to hear this important topic. So, as a parent of young children, we want to foster hope and opportunity for our children, right? We care so much about, right now, about our education of our children, and then eventually we'll care about them getting a job and moving out and starting their own career, right? We love them for a while they're with us, maybe, but in any event, it's about building that hope and opportunity in them so that it transitions to them to make those life decisions too. But for parents, and maybe this is for the parents, and then Eden, maybe for you as well. You know, some parents are willing to go out there and do whatever it takes to get their kids in these schools and give the best educational opportunity they can. Some maybe don't have those resources, or they have trepidation as to, you know, breaking the norm. What would you do to encourage them to take that step, to say this is not outside the norm? This is a very, you know, you're doing the right thing for your children. What, you know, you folks have all made that decision for your children. What encouragement do you have for families to explore that option, to realize that there isn't really a barrier here? There's opportunity. What encouragement could you give families?
I think the encouragement I would give is that if you love your children and you desire for them to have a bright future, you will come out of yourself and work and advocate for them, because they are children and they need us. They depend on us to speak up for them, to find safety for them, to provide everything they need. It comes from us. And so, yes, it might feel uncomfortable because you're stepping out of what you would normally do, or tradition of family. Maybe you lived in a city all your life, and your family have lived in a city your whole life, and you're used to just sending the kids out the door. You don't know anything different, but you've heard of something. Follow that lead. Ask questions. It's okay to ask questions. It's okay to investigate. It's okay to speak up for your children. And it's okay to advocate, and it's okay to be nervous about stepping out. It's normal, but we have to put our own feelings aside when it comes to what is best for our children and speak up.
Great.
For me, I had some family members that were willing to do that. They homeschooled in the 80s when there was only one choice of curriculum. And by the time, so that was my confidence, was I am going to try this. And then my son in second grade said, "Can I please go to school?" And so then whereas, you know, there are other homeschoolers like, this is the way we're doing this. And just his experience was not as good as he would like it, and my confidence wasn't there. So I looked into other schools and the options, so just to encourage them that there are other resources. And just that same thing happened with competition and demand. Now homeschool curriculum is an overwhelming task to sort through. There's so much.
And one final, you know, I'm not letting you off the hook. So whenever you decide, when your family was deciding on you know, CSY here, is that something you were part of? Is, you know, explain that, how that conversation went, and were you part of that decision making as well?
Yeah, so actually I wasn't super aware of all of the options that were out there, but we all sat down one day and we talked about it, because I thought, oh, I'll have to do cyber school, I don't want to do that. But they were like, no, there's like private schools we can send you to, there's Christian schools. And so we just kind of talked about what we wanted in a school. And me, and I have a twin sister as well, she goes here. And we just decided all together that we wanted somewhere where we could get a quality education and also feel like we had a community around us who was also helping us and encouraging us. And yeah.
Great. Well, thank you.
Representative Rowe.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank all three of you for being here today. Ms. Thompson, I'm going to start with you. How long did you homeschool your children?
So my son in second grade requested to go to school. So then my daughter, Grace, just started right away, and then we transitioned to CSY. CSY provided some other opportunities with sports and things and band that weren't at the previous school.
Mm-hmm. So my mother, I'm very grateful to her, homeschooled my 3 siblings and me, and now my brother is homeschooling all 4 of his children. So as you referenced, there are now 2 generations of Rose that have been subsidized in the local government schools. But one thing I remembered growing up was that for anything extracurricular that we wanted to do, if we wanted to do like a chemistry lab or a language class, we had to go pay out of pocket to do that at either a local Christian school, or there was like a local co-op for homeschoolers for the science labs. And shout out to the Pennsylvania College of Technology. They put on a great physics program for the homeschool groups, but those were all things we still had to pay for, despite the fact that we were also paying to subsidize the government school, despite never having used any of their services. So were there other extracurriculars that you ran into during that span of time when you were homeschooling your son, or are there currently, and this can be for any of you, other extracurriculars that you're having to pay for out of pocket still, or are those needs all being met now?
There weren't any other than sports. He was in hockey, actually, yeah. So, public schools actually do have hockey programs, and that might have been. I don't remember, because the York Devils, it was one thing, and then he participated in high school hockey, and but that's one that you would pay for whether in school or not. But my daughter currently is not doing anything extra outside of school.
Okay. And then Eden, I wanted to ask you, I'm also my church pianist, so thank you for stepping up and serving in that role. I wanted to ask, as far as like a learning style goes, so one of the reasons I'm very grateful my mother homeschooled me was because I don't do well in classrooms. I'm not an auditory learner. I would take my books, I'd go to the treehouse, and I'd read by myself for a couple hours. If I got stuck, I knew I could go find my mom somewhere. So for you, transitioning from your previous school to where you are now, was there a shift in a learning environment that you felt like you were able to thrive better, or what would you attribute to kind of your shift towards a educational academic improvement in this environment?
I would just say the teacher-to-student ratio obviously was a lot smaller at a Christian school because there's less students in the classroom. And I say the teaching just becomes more personable. The teachers know you on a personal level, and they're able to see if you're struggling in some places, and you have you're comfortable enough with them to ask and be like, hey, I'm not really understanding it, and they'll make time for you after class. It's a lot more flexible than it would be in a public school. There's not as many students, and you're able to get all your needs met that you need to have met.
Ms. Graham, have you noticed similarly with your son, learning environment, a difference, something that he thrives in this environment?
All 3 of my boys are different type of learners, and I feel like at York Academy they definitely touch everything through inclusion, everything. They make sure that a part of every lesson there is something that is read, something that is touched, something that they actually have to do. So I feel like all their needs are met. Also, they are very flexible with after school assistance, and they also have, which I was very appreciative of, it was math night for parents, because as we know, math is no longer the math that we know. It's very different. So they even brought us in on a math night for parents to help us so that we can help our children at home with homework.
I might need to drop in on one of those because
Yes.
trying to help my nieces and nephews with it, I'm lost.
It's insane.
Thank you all very much for being here. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Administrator Delosier.
Thank you, Chairman. My question really is kind of a little bit of a throwback for a couple of that have come around in the talks. That you mentioned your religious base, and obviously your son asking to come, which I admire the fact that you gave it a good college try, because I always joke with my kids, I don't know that I could have done that. So homeschooling is absolutely its own nature, and for those that try. So my question really, as moms, and then as and you mentioned it just a minute ago when Representative Becker was asking as to why did you, what would you say to other families, but also for your preference? You had mentioned, like I said, religious beliefs, having a different education for your child. What would you say your top reason for going to the school that you chose for your child? I recognize that your history obviously leads into that. You had a conversation with your family, and you mentioned your religious base and commonality of thought process. But if you were talking to another family that was talking about it, what would you say your number one reason is? What opportunity could they achieve that they wouldn't achieve within that private or that public school that they might be attending? What selling point would you give to that? And you've mentioned a couple of them, so I know some of it might be redundant, but just the ability to recognize that you made a choice and you stepped outside that box that you mentioned. What made you do it?
I was a daycare teacher up in Northeastern School District, and that's where my children were until kindergarten. All their friends from daycare and pre-K, they all went to Northeastern School District. I live in York City, and I knew that my children are not, I hate to say this, but they're not city kids. That was my driving goal, because I knew that they would have a difficult time transitioning from the environment they were brought up in until they were 5 to the environment that we commonly see in city schools. It's not right, it's not fair, and I'm sorry, but it is what it is.
What was your decision point?
That was my decision point, was that I did not want to do that, because that was also one of the things that happened to me. I was in private school from 1st to 2nd grade, and then I'm saying kindergarten to 1st grade, and then I was thrown into probably one of the worst city schools ever. So it was almost like throwing the sheep, to the wolves. Was my experience. The horror stories I can tell you would blow your mind. But I did not want, that was my driving thing, is that I just did not want, not that that would have happened here. Like I said, I don't know enough about the school system here, but it was just the trigger that was in me that made me panic that I needed to do something for my kids. Yeah.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Amy?
The curriculum choice as well, just the content of the curriculum, and the character, the caliber of the teachers in the school, and just the interaction. This school is just, the teachers come up with challenges to students in volleyball and even in re-enrollment. I would love to show you photos of what the teachers dressed up in, because we got our re-enrollment, like we beat the deadline. And so the environment and the just the attention to the individual, and knowing the teacher, and the teacher knowing the students.
The relationships in and of themselves in the classroom.
Right.
Okay, all right, thanks. Eden, is there anything in particular that made you jump?
Not really. It's just there's so many opportunities you can get involved in at a private school like this. And at public school, I couldn't even dream of doing as much stuff as I do now here. And it, like I said in whatever I said before, but it is a lot. But I'm extremely grateful for that, because I feel like it's made me grow a lot as a person. So
that's great. Okay, and you had gone through a number of things, so I appreciate that. And that's the combination of just making that choice that fits your family, I think is important, and one that we should have. So thank you.
Representative Rigby.
Am I the last one? Save the best for last? Thank you, thank you. So I say. Thank you very much. I just want to share with the panel, my kids went through parochial school, and my daughter in 9th or 10th grade thought she wanted to switch and go to public school, and we looked to enroll her, until we found out that she actually would have been held back a year, that she was that far ahead going through Catholic school. And she's glad she went back. The opportunities, she was in the chorus, she sang, she was in the school musical, which she carried on and also did in college. She wouldn't have had those opportunities in a public school. And for my son, when you share about your son, was always afraid of heights, and then went into college, ROTC, and started jumping out of helicopters. So I can't figure it out. I don't know how that happens, but I'll blame it on the Catholic school. Thank you.
No fear.
Representative Fink.
I have more of a comment. I just want to say thank you to you ladies for being here. for being an example for other people. Choosing alternative schools is not easy. It's expensive, and it takes a lot of time. You might have to travel outside of what you would normally have to do when your kid's in public school with just after school activities and things like that. So it is difficult. I appreciate it. We've at the Fink House, we've public schooled, private schooled, cyber schooled, homeschooled. We've done it all at the Fink House, and it's hard. And it's hard. It's a hard dynamic to kind of bring into your family. So thank you for being examples for other people.
Representative Gleim.
Time's up. Class is out. I just have a really quick question. I'm a mom of 3, and none of my kids live in Pennsylvania, so they all moved out. So, Eden, I just have a quick question for you after you go on to college. Do you think that Pennsylvania is a place that you could stay and work, or are you planning to leave, or do you know?
I'd really love to stay here, actually. I enjoyed here.
That was all I wanted to know. Thank you.
So there's a couple districts I might want you to move to once we get to that. I'm kidding. I have a couple follow-up questions actually for you, Eden. We talked a lot today about the different choices, and there's these, presuppositions or these assumptions rather that many of us make about particular types of education, whether it's public. I always, poke fun at my friend Representative Rowe about homeschooling and Representative Ledbetter because there's so many untrue assumptions that are made broadly in culture about people in different types of educational settings, and I think there's untrue assumptions that are made regarding private school and Christian schools in this case in particular. And I wanted to ask you, from where you're sitting, from your perspective, is there anywhere where you believe that your position at a private Christian school has put you at a disadvantage because you weren't in a public school? And I promise you won't get in trouble. I know you might have teachers or administrators here, but you'll still graduate and everything will be all right. But no, I'm just curious your perspective on that.
Well, I'm being absolutely truthful here. But I feel like, no, the biggest advantage I ever could have done for my education was come here. I feel like I've just learned so much and grown so much as a person, and honestly, I would never even see myself sitting here 4 years ago as a freshman at Central, so I think that speaks for itself.
All right, thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you to you, the whole panel. I thought this was really informative. It was a great perspective that we got, and it's very much appreciated. So that is it for testifiers today. Representative Diorsi, if you'd like to give some closing remarks, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, so thank you, you three, and our previous 2 panelists, and once again for our gracious host. Thanks for allowing us to use your space. I just wanted to recap with 3 really important takeaways, actually 4. The first being that apparently Representative Rowe had a treehouse that he would steal away to and read in back in the day.
That is an absolute takeaway.
But in all seriousness, number 1, what I heard today is school choice is popular. As popular as 3/4 of Pennsylvanians when polled are favorable of it. Number 2, that it's nonpartisan. It's not a Republican thing. It's not a Democratic thing. It's about our kids. And to say otherwise is mischaracterizing it. And number 3 is the school choice movement is not anti-public school. Just like my previous point, to take it. Myself as a school choice advocate, I'm joined by a lot of people here, obviously, who are pro-school choice. That is not synonymous with anti-public school. So I just wanted to say those 3 takeaways, and of course the bonus takeaway of the treehouse. Thank you.
I think that's a wonderful closing there, even with the treehouse comment. But I think it's important to note that this isn't about different systems, whether it's private, public, charter. This is about hope for kids and hope for families, regardless of their zip code. that they can have a future, that they can have their future here in Pennsylvania, and that they can succeed and take advantage of all the talents that they do in fact have. So thank you, Representative, for organizing this. Thank you for your leadership on this subject. We have another hearing a week from today, I believe, March 22nd. Not as exciting of a topic. It's on permitting. So we'll be talking about the obstacles of opportunity there. But until then, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you all for being here.